had a railway background, and quite naturally the interest transferred itself to my son, and when he was ill with measles at the age of 3, it was most natural for me to tell him stories about trains. And he said, "Daddy, what are the engines' names?"
That's the way.
And I invented names on the spur of the moment: Edward, Gordon, Henry, and so on. There was Edward's Day Out, Henry in the Tunnel, and then there was another story based on a story I'd read in the magazine about a Highland Railway banker being left behind. This was the story of how Gordon got stuck on the hill and had to be rescued by Edward, the engine whom he despised, banking him in the rear. But once Edward had started him off, Gordon was able to go on fast, and poor Edward ran out of steam and got left behind. And so there it was. And the first book, 3 Railway Engines, was published in 1945.
Now, ask any small child, especially boys, who their favourite story character is, and you're more than likely to hear Thomas the Tank Engine. Well as the books, many of them will play with the toys, wave the flags, sleep under the duvet covers, and wear the clothes. Thomas has become a marketing sensation. Now, this week, the latest in the Thomas and Friends series is published, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth in a Hampshire vicarage of the man who was to become a vicar himself and who made up the first Thomas the Tank Engine stories to keep his son happy during the years of the Second World War. That little boy, Christopher Awdry, is now 70, and he told me how it all began.
I decided to succumb to measles, and Father was left with the unenviable task of keeping me amused. He remembered a rhyme from his own childhood, which went early in the morning down by the station, see the little engines all in a row. Along comes the driver, pulls the little lever, beep, beep, and off we go. And because words perhaps aren't terribly interesting to a 2-year-old, he drew a picture to go with it. It was a very simple picture. 6 engines lined up in an engine shed, front first, so he wouldn't have to bother about drawing the wheels. They all had faces, and one of the faces was a sad one. And this drew perhaps the inevitable question, why is he sad, Daddy? Well, he said, he hasn't been out for a long time. Why hasn't he been out for a long time, Daddy? Well, the other engines are all bigger than he is, so the drivers choose them first. What's the engine's name, Daddy? Edward, he said. And anyone who knows the first couple of pages of Edward's Day Out, the first story, will probably recognise those answers as being incorporated in those first 2 pages. And it just grew from there. I obviously liked the story, so Father concocted another 2.
The stories are very moral stories. Naughty people always get their comeuppance. Politeness is rewarded. Was this your father's way of teaching you morality?
Yes, but it wouldn't have been in the way that he was taught morality. He always used to say that the children's books that he was given made a point, made a moral, thumped it home, and then after a little while they thumped it home again, and then they thumped it home a 3rd time, and before you'd finished, you'd got a 4th time just for good measure. He was trying to be a lot more subtle than that. It was probably not deliberately to make the point, but to suggest the point. Perhaps merely acting out his own morals in a way, rather than to say, look, this is a story to a child. This is a story that's got morals. You must take heed of it because good is always rewarded and bad is punished. But he added the rider, of course, that forgiveness is rewarded as well. When Henry and Gordon and James go on strike, I think it's in book 5, they're protesting. It was very topical at the time because this would have been about 1950, 51.
Very topical now.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They go on strike because they're protesting against being forced to do menial duties like shunting. And they decide to go on strike, so Edward and Thomas and Percy run the line very efficiently. But eventually the big engines come to their senses and say that they're sorry for being difficult, and you know, they're allowed to come out and do their duties again as if nothing had happened. The bad is forgotten.
You've continued the tradition and now write Thomas and Friends stories yourself. A book celebrating the centenary of your father's birth is being published, and there's a story in there about the thin clergyman. Mm-hmm. How important is it, do you think, that children today know where the stories originated?
I don't think a lot of them do or care, frankly. Many of the people we talk to on visits perhaps know the name Awdry, but aren't in fact conscious, A, that father died 13 years ago, or B, that I've taken over writing from him. The Awdry name is all they know. So, you know, the elderly bloke with a beard or the greying chap without one is irrelevant.
That's Christopher Awdry, who I met a few days ago. Now, whilst I was with Christopher, I did, of course, have to ask him about all the wealth that the Thomas the Tank Engine merchandise, including the toys, the events, the clothes, the television series, to say nothing of the books, must have brought to the Awdry family.
Not probably as wealthy as most people expect. Yes, we're comfortable. But as to the I think someone once quoted about 14 million a year, which was way, way, way off beam. And this was some years ago, and it was, and Father quickly refuted it. Yeah, it's created a lot of income, but not probably so much, anywhere near so much as most people think.
Christopher Awdry, who lives in Dorset, and it was lovely to meet him, and what a gracious and welcoming man he is. And that latest in the series, number 42, Thomas and Friends, by Christopher Awdry, took over writing the Thomas the Tank Engine series from his father when he died 13 years ago. Well, he took over before then, but Father W.R. Awdry died 13 years ago. Lovely book, and that's got the story in about the fat controller and the thin clergyman.